Gary. Let's call to order the Sparks City Council meeting for Monday, June 26th with a roll call.
Mayor Lawson.
Here.
Council members Abbott.
Here.
Vanderwell.
Here.
Anderson.
Here.
Bybee.
Here.
Dare.
Here.
City Attorney Duncan.
Here.
City Manager Croots.
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Okay, we have our invocation by Chaplain Major Shay C. Gilliam, U.S. Air Force.
So thank you to the council for inviting me to come and pray to you today, and thank you for everyone for coming today. Please, if you would, join me in a word of prayer. Oh, I'm sorry. My name is Chaplain Shay Gilliam with the Nevada Air National Guard, so thank you all for letting me be here today. Please, would you pray with me? Dear Heavenly Father, as we gather here today for our city's council meeting, we ask for your presence and your guidance. Every authority comes from you, Lord, and you appoint all our leaders. And so I pray that you afford these men and women with wisdom and discernment as they convene to make decisions that would impact the lives of the residents of Sparks. Would you guide this council with your insight and inspire them to work toward the greater good of all citizens? Would you influence them to lead with integrity and a steadfast commitment to justice, impartiality, and compassion? Would you empower them to work together in the spirit of cooperation, respect, and set aside their differences for the greater good of all? We ask for your goodness and power in our lives. We ask that you would comfort all those in our city who live in fear and poverty. We ask for your protection and blessings upon our nation, our state, our local communities, and all the first responders and military members who serve and protect us. God, please receive this invocation with our humility and gratitude, trusting in your infinite power and love. It's in your name that I pray this prayer. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. Diane, will you lead us in the pledge?
Yes. If you'll please join me. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I thought that was your stomach.
I was not going to open my eyes and find out.
Okay, we move on to 4.1, public comment. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We did not receive any public comment cards, Mr. Mayor, but we
Anyone
did
in-
receive one emailed public comment.
Okay, that would be entered into the record.
Correct.
Anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. Mr. Anderson, will you lead the agenda?
Yes, sir. I would like to move to approve the agenda with the following change, and that is to remove item 7.3.
Okay, I've got a motion from Mr. Anderson. Ms. Vanderwell?
I'll second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Minutes. Any changes to the minutes? If not, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Dare
I move to approve the minutes of the Sparks City Council meeting for June 12th, 2023.
and Ms. Bybee.
I'll second that motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to announcements, presentation, recognition items. 7.1, proclamation Scoliosis Awareness Month. We have somebody here for that? We just have a seat there and we'll have you say some words afterwards. Don't get bucked off that chair, young lady. Those are new chairs. We don't know how they operate.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Whereas scoliosis is an abdominal curvature of the spine and affects between 2 and 3% of the population, or an estimated 7 million people in the United States, and whereas scoliosis is a condition that strikes without regard to gender, race, age, or economic status, and whereas an estimated 1 million scoliosis patients utilize healthcare yearly, with approximately 1 of every 6 children diagnosed with this condition eventually needing active medical intervention, and whereas the primary age of onset for scoliosis is between 10 and 15, with females being 5 times more likely to progress to a curved magnitude that requires treatment than males. And whereas scoliosis screening programs allow for early detection and treatment opportunities that may alleviate the worst effects of the condition. And whereas Scoliosis Awareness Month is an opportunity to raise awareness of early detection and proper treatment for scoliosis to ensure our children and families live healthy lives. Now therefore, I, Ed Lawson, Mayor of the City of Sparks, do hereby proclaim June 2023 as Scoliosis Awareness Month.
Will you give us your name for the record and go ahead and say a few words?
My name is Sarah Holtz. This is my daughter, Rylan Holtz. We're here on behalf of the Ellis family. They started the Curvy Girls, which is a support group for girls in Northern Nevada. I just want to thank you all for having us here today. Rylan is 7.5. She got her brace about a month ago. Her pediatrician, just by doing annual checks, caught it early, so we were able to catch it before she needed surgery, but she'll be braced for about 7 years. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything you want to say?
You're going to take a picture, Julie? Yeah. Diane, you want to get a picture with?
Yep. Come here.
I didn't even know she was wearing a brace.
Change it up, just smile.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, guys. All right, 7.2, NPE Awareness Day. Mr. Dare.
Whereas genetic testing or DNA testing has led to a large increase in not parent-expected or NPE discoveries over the last decade, meaning the genealogy report shows a parent-child genetic mismatch. And whereas the mismatch could be the result of a hidden adoption, donor conception, affair, sexual assault, or other circumstances, and whereas researchers around the world are analyzing the emotional experience of NPE discoveries, which may cause reactions such as shock, grief, sadness, confusion, anger, or loneliness, and can result in serious mental health issues for the unsuspecting DNA tester. And whereas family relationships may be significantly strained due to NPE discoveries, particularly if secrets were kept from an individual by multiple parties. Biological connections can change or vanish for family members, and a person's entire identity be shaken to its core in a split second. And whereas it is now estimated that between 5 and 10% of the world's population may fall in the NPE category, meaning 700 million people could be dealing with misattributed parentage. And whereas by raising awareness, offering education, and creating a sense of community, we can encourage healing and help eliminate the sense of embarrassment or shame around NPE discoveries. And whereas resources for support for NPE discoveries include DNA NPE Friends Fellowship, Watershed DNA, and DNA Angels, as well as licensed therapists in our community. Now therefore, Ed Lawson, Mayor of the City of Sparks, Nevada, does hereby proclaim June 27th, 2023 as NPE Awareness Day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Julie Torres, and this is my friend Jennifer Linder-Smith. Coincidentally, we went to high school together, and there were 75 kids in our graduating class, and we didn't find out, either one of us, until we were in our 40s, that we were MPE. So with the DNA tests that are out there now, Ancestry.com, Heritage, 23andMe, a lot of people are researching their genealogy. And my husband bought my kit for me for Christmas one year, so I could research my genealogy, and I found out that my birth certificate dad was not my dad at 44. So it was a shock. It happened when I was working here. There weren't any, there wasn't support as far as therapists. There were no licensed therapists that were really involved with this in our area. I used Teladoc to begin with because there were some people that were just starting the therapy with this. But those DNA kits, they should come with a warning label because sometimes it's not just parentage, you can find a half sibling that you didn't know about, or you may find out that you were adopted and you were unaware of that. Many years ago, there wasn't a DNA thing going around, so we weren't sure. The secret was going to their grave with them, and now it's no longer going to their grave. And it comes with a lot of mental health issues. I always liken it to when I first found out standing inside of a hurricane or a tornado and just watching the vortex spin and you couldn't stop it. Everything that you knew as real was gone. And when you find that out later in life, you've lived a lifetime thinking, for example, that you were Jewish, you attended Jewish schools, you're Christian, or if you're a Christian faith and you find out you're something, completely different, you learn to cook in your grandma's Italian kitchen, and then all of a sudden, those things are not your attributes anymore. And so we're here today because one of the support groups that I'm in has asked that we get out into our communities and we let people know that this is out there. So if you look at that, between 5 and 10% of the world's population, that's huge. We're not out of the norm, but we felt very abnormal for a long time. I do recommend getting into the support groups. There was one that I found one morning shortly after I made my discovery on Good Morning America. And it was a Facebook group, and there was about 1,500 people in that group when I joined it 5 years ago. We have over 10,000 people in that one support group right now. So that shows you, and their stories are all very similar to ours, but find some help. And if you know somebody that is in PE, we ask that you try to maybe research a little bit, provide some support. To you, nothing's changed, but to everything has changed for us. And so just to give you a little bit, lean on your church as well. That's one thing that I wasn't good at, and I should have been better at that, is to lean on my church. Understand what they're going through. You can't get the whole thing because it's not happening to you, but do some research and maybe speak to a therapist yourself to see how you could better provide some support. Don't expect them to get over it or get over it quickly, because it's been 5.5 years and I'm not over it. Are you over it?
No, I'm not over it.
One of the biggest things is honesty. But when you tell a young person, a little kid, hey, you were adopted, or hey, this isn't your dad, or this is your dad that's raising you, so he's your daddy, but he's not your biological father. It's easier for a small mind to process that than it is for somebody in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s. So just to mention a little bit of things that are coming back our way now are the war babies. Approximately 100,000 babies were born to American GIs in Vietnam, 50,000 in the Philippines, between 20 and 30,000 in South Korea, and over 50,000 in World War II over in Great Britain and West Germany. Those people also have access to Ancestry.com. So they're finding their daddy's families in America. And so when you think you're researching your family, and there's half-sibling pops up, and now you've realized that your dad had a whole other life prior to you, right? So a lot of the states where adoptions are sealed, they thought that those records were never going to be known. Well, genealogy is going to tell the truth. DNA doesn't lie, even if your mom does. And I can laugh about that now. Even though you're not the one providing the DNA sample, if your children do, if your siblings do, somebody else in your family does, it will connect. So that spider web is out there. I talked to somebody at work here not long ago, and I was the 5th person that they had spoken to recently that had this happen. So it's very common, and we wanted to make sure that we brought light to it. And Jennifer didn't have really anything prepared, but I still think it's really important that she has a chance to say something.
Thank you.
She's been good support. Thank you so much for reading that. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not. I would never do it. My wife did it. Never know. Okay. Thank you, Julie. All right, let's move on to consent items. Anyone wish to pull a consent item? Or if not, I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Vanderwell.
Oops, it just left.
Change your mind?
No, like it left the screen. I move to approve consent items 8.1 through 8.6 as submitted.
Mr. Abbott.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, general business, 9.1, consideration, discussion, and possible acceptance of a grant from the National Endowment for the Arts in the amount of $18,750 to support the commission and installation of a public piece of artwork in the Victorian Square Cultural District.
Okay. Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson and council members. I'm Raquel Montserrat, your special events supervisor. I'm here today to inform you that we've received an offer from the National Endowment for the Arts grant in the amount of $18,750. In 2022, the City of Sparks applied for a Grants for Arts Projects grant through the National Endowment for the Arts to help fund a commissioned art piece to be installed across from Victorian Plaza in downtown Sparks. This commissioned art piece was part of the Together We See Sparks creative placemaking plan that was approved by City Council in May 2020. The commissioned piece will be located on a large pedestal that currently holds the temporary art piece RMAB and was previously the location of a prefab fountain. We will partner with the Generator, City of Sparks Equity and Inclusion Advisory Committee, and 39 North Downtown to guide the public input portion of this project, as well as create an online public survey. Once the public input is complete, a national call for artists will be distributed in August to identify artists to present design concepts to the selection committee and community. Up to 3 artists or artist teams will be chosen to present their concepts to the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee in the fall, and the Arts and Culture Advisory Committee will choose 1 artist to make a recommendation to City Council for approval. This project is projected to be completed in November 2024. With that, I'm before you today requesting that you accept this National Endowment for the Arts grant in the amount of $18,750 to help fund the commission and installation of this art piece. Happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the council?
I'm super excited, having been involved with some of the placemaking and things that we did several years ago, and really looking at Victorian Square and trying to, once the construction is closer to being complete, being able to really do the art enhancements that we want. And obviously that's a big pedestal down there, and seeing a prominent piece of art is there. And I guess my question would be, are you looking at only, or trying to target local artists in the region, or it's open to all artists, and then the Art and Culture Commission will choose one?
It'll be a national call, but we will reach out to local artists as well.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Anyone else? This your first presentation in front of council?
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Good job. The millions of people watching us on YouTube are happy
She brought
with
us
your.
money. Hey,
Hey, and it's,
that's like an easy.
bringing us money.
Yeah,
all
let's
right,
hope it's
any other
always that.
comments? All right, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Abbott.
I move to accept the grant from the National Endowment of the Arts in the amount of $18,750 to support the commission and installation of a public piece of artwork in the Victorian Square Cultural District.
Mr. Anderson.
I'll second the motion.
I got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Raquel.
Thank
Appreciate it.
you.
Good job. Keep coming back with those kind of donations.
Yeah, you're gonna spend money.
Yeah, where's so many of your?
9.2, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a purchase and sale agreement, AC 5967, between SR 95 Belvedere LLC, Kelly Fairmont, Inc., and the City of Sparks for the purchase of a parcel of 1.85 acres in size located in the Pioneer Meadows New Urban District for future Fire Station Number 6 in the amount of $805,860, and to authorize the city manager to execute the escrow documents. Mr. Martini.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am John Martini, your Assistant City Manager. I'm very happy to be before you today for your consideration of a purchase and sale agreement to acquire some land in Pioneer Meadows for us to build Fire Station 6 on. The map before you, just to give you some orientation as to where we are in Pioneer Meadows. In the middle of the screen, you can see Wingfield Hills Drive. Of course, to the bottom is Vista Boulevard. The southern part of Pioneer Meadows being where the Rayleigh Shopping Center is. This site is located in the northwest quadrant on an 80-acre parcel that, as of today, is mostly undeveloped. You can see from the figure that the future home of Fire Station 6 will be located
it's already
on the
built.
northwest corner of Scheidbar Row and Rolling Meadows Drive. So a little bit of background. It was just about a year ago that the city and DJB Holdings LLC and BB Investment Holdings LLC, those are the land holding entities for Lennar Homes, so we were actually dealing with our friends at Lennar, agreed to terms for the city to purchase at that time up to 2 acres of land within that greater 80-acre site. In the term sheet that we came to agreement on, the city agreed to buy the land at $10 a square foot, and Lennar, or DJB Holdings and BB Investment Holdings LLC, agreed to create the parcel, create a parcel map that would create a parcel for us to buy, to construct infrastructure necessary to support the development. So here we're talking about sewer, water, gas, electric, all the things you need to build a building, and of course grading. So if you haven't been out there, the current site, as I mentioned earlier, is mostly undeveloped. About 200,000 yards of fill needs to be brought into the greater 80-acre site to bring it up so that things like storm drain and sewer will work. Specific to our future parcel, about 4 to 5 feet of fill needs to be placed across the entire future parcel for us to be able to build a fire station on it. Back to background, in November of 2022, Lennar did sell the entire 80-acre parcel to SR 95 Belvedere LLC and Kelly Fairmont Inc. And for my presentation today, I'm just going to simply refer to them as Belvedere Kelly for short, or the seller. As part of the transaction between Lennar and Belvedere Kelly, they agreed to honor the terms that we had struck back in June. So moving forward into January of this year, staff started negotiations with Belvedere Kelly to effectuate what is now in front of you, the purchase and sale agreement. And to that end, let's go through the specifics of the agreement. Purchase and sale, of course, would be the first term, wherein the city is agreeing to buy the property, and Belvedere Kelly is agreeing to sell it to us, subject to the terms of the agreement. The purchase price remains at $10 a square foot. The parcel map has been drawn. Again, if you note on the figure, you won't see a little 2-acre cutout of parcel. Mr. Erickson and Mr. Kaysen and our design team have been working hard on the fire station, and the site, as it is designed right now, and we're at final design, requires 1.85 acres of land. And a parcel map has been drawn. We found out last week it is now being routed to the utility companies for signature. Those are usually the last signatures we get. So I believe the parcel map we can consider is pending. At 1.8 acres in size, the purchase price at $10 a square foot will be $805,860. Title to the property will be conveyed to the city through a grant bargain and sale deed. General terms of escrow, the city agrees to open escrow with First American Title no later than 20 days after this agreement has been struck. The city shall deposit $5,000 of earnest money in escrow. Taxes and assessments for the current year as of the close of escrow would be prorated between the two parties, and closing costs will be split 50-50 between the buyer and seller. Some conditions to closing: the legal parcel map. The parcel map actually has to be recorded, so there's a parcel map for us to buy. Belvedere Kelly will deliver into escrow an executed grant bargain and sale deed sufficient to convey the title to the city, and the city shall receive an owner's policy of title insurance equal to the purchase price of the land. As I mentioned earlier, in our original term sheet, Lennar had agreed to certain improvements on the property, of which Belvedere Kelly have honored. That made negotiation of the purchase and sale agreement, I'll say, a little tricky. We had some hurdles to get over. You may note that we had a very wet winter, and we've had an associated very wet spring. So grading has not been able to get going on the property yet because it's very, very wet. So the grading is still pending, and the sewer line and storm drain lines are still pending. They have not been built. Lennar was able to complete Shidebar Road in the time between the term sheet and as we sit here today. And Shidebar Road has been constructed, and it does include gas, electric, potable water, and effluent that we can use to build the fire station with. So to some post-closing obligations, in the land transaction between Belvedere Kelly and Lennar, so when Belvedere Kelly bought it from Lennar, Lennar agreed to grade 100,000 yards worth of earthwork on the site. Per their agreement, Lennar has until May 11th of 2024 to accomplish that grading. Upon completion of the grading, Belvedere Kelly will provide sewer and storm drain facilities to our future site. Belvedere Kelly, as a post-closing obligation, is also required to provide us with any temporary or permanent easements we may need across their land to build our fire station. And all said and done, Belvedere Kelly anticipates that all post-closing obligations will be completed by December of 2024. So that probably draws some questions to your mind. We buy the property, but how long will it be until we can actually put the project on the street, get bids, and start construction of the fire station? In analyzing a risk component, if you will, to this purchase and sale agreement, I think the risk of the straight-up purchase and sale is very low. It's pretty much a normal purchase and sale agreement in terms of escrow. Where it gets a little tricky is the post-closing obligations, and it really centers around when the grading can be accomplished. In our conversations with Belvedere Kelly through their development company, LDK Ventures, as well as with the construction wing at Lennar, I see two parties who are very, very motivated to get this work going. Lennar very much wants to meet their obligation and finish their original contract with Belvedere Kelly. Belvedere Kelly is very motivated to get the site graded so they can get under construction and start selling their project to the market, from which they've conveyed to staff is a very hot market right now. So I look at this as kind of two bookends of risk. What I see in front of us today, of course, it's getting kind of cloudy out there right now, and it looks like it's going to rain again. If you go out to the site, Lennar has started what is called clearing and grubbing. They're removing sagebrush from the site and pulling up the topsoil, putting it in a stockpile to get the property to what's called subgrade so they can start bringing fill material in. I think, given my conversations and the schedules they've kind of put out that they'd like to see, I have confidence that the site will be graded by this fall or early winter. So that would allow us to sell the bonds that we've been talking about. Brian and John can bring forward, a construction contract for council's approval. First, we've got to put the job out to bid, then a construction contract. I think we're on track to be there this fall, early winter. Now, that said, there could be a change in the market where things cool down and Belvedere Kelly suddenly isn't as excited to get this project going on that timeline. Lennar could hit additional obstacles in the way of getting the grading done in the form of weather, or the Pioneer Meadows just isn't drying out as fast as we would like it to. The worst case scenario is that we won't be able to bring the project under construction until after December of 2024. Those are kind of your bookends. With the opinion of your assistant city manager in our conversations, I do see this project staying on track to be done this fall. That said, things can happen in between. Mr. Mayor, whenever we enter into these kind of negotiations, it's never a single person. It's always a team. I want to thank Brandon Sendall from the city's attorney's office. He was instrumental in getting us here. And Trey Gunlatch and Jay Hickenlively with LDK Ventures. It was an interesting negotiation. All of us want to move forward, but we just kind of had these bumps in the way. I think the way the purchase and sale agreement with obligations of escrow and then, of course, post-closing obligations, I think it was a fairly elegant solution. I was a little worried going into negotiations. They'd say, call us when we're done grading, and I wouldn't have been able to say when that is, but we didn't work that way. We worked to get to a solution. So alternatives before the council today. You can approve the purchase and sale agreement as I've outlined here today, or you could reject the agreement and provide direction to the city manager. That concludes my presentation, Mr. Mayor, and I'm available if you have any questions.
Mr. Dare.
Yes. Thank you. I know you guys have been working on this for a long time, and I think I ran on this the first time I ever ran anything is talking about this fire station, so it's an exciting day to be here. One of my biggest questions is just worst case scenario, if our current situation continues and how we're doing it, do we believe, and I know our fire chief is here, that we have proper coverage to take care of our citizens, because we know a lot of homes are going in there in the next 4 years, whatever. So if worst case scenario, if I move in there and I'm a citizen, can I say it's all good? We know we are taken care of because our city council loves us and our city's doing everything we can. I could just, for the record, put that on there of what we're doing, how we're growing, and making sure that it's very clear.
I think Chief White's here.
Oh,
It is on. Mayor Lawson, members of the council, City Manager Kreutz. Right now, I think we are on pace to be operational with the development. And that was the intent, was to grow along with the new development. Right now, the area is being serviced by our Station 4, our Station 5, and Truckee Meadows Station 64 from above. So it's kind of triangulated. But the call volume, as we know, will increase as development and occupation occurs. So we are trying to develop along with it, a lot of moving parts. I do want to thank John Martini, everybody associated with the land acquisition, as well as a member of my team, Kevin Jacobus, and all the team on the station design, and Jeff Kronk and his team on the bond and the financing, all of those components, as well as your approval of our submittal for a SAFER grant to provide staffing for that, should we be successful. Just the rest of my team who are diligently working along with HR, Jill Valdez and her team to hire and train the personnel that will be assigned there, or our new employees, so that we can have all of our stations covered. But I think right now that the area is being covered based on its current population and occupancy, as well as can be triangulated by those 3 different stations, and one of which is an allied agency from Truckee Meadows. But that station will absolutely be necessary to be developed and staffed with the development and the occupying of those homes.
thank you. Everything I've seen, I agree with that fully. It's good to hear from you, and I think it's good for our citizens to hear from our fire chief, and that they, going forward, they feel safe. So thank you. Appreciate that.
Ms. Vanderwell.
I just have a really quick question for Mr. Martini. On this parcel, we have rezoned it to industrial, correct? Or it's mixed?
Mixed.
That's what I thought. It's mixed
yeah.
use. Okay.
Logistics center is kind of
Okay.
the term in my head, yeah.
Okay. All right. So with logistics centers, we require that they have sprinkler systems in them, correct?
Buildings of those size, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Well, it's about time we were getting down this road, so I'm glad to see that. All right, with that, then I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Dare.
I'm excited for this motion. Woo! I move to approve the purchase and sale agreement AC 5967 between SR 95 Belvedere LLC, Kelly Fairmont Incorporated, and the City of Sparks for the purchase of a parcel 1.85 acres in size located in the Pioneer Meadows New Urban District for future Fire Station Number 6 in the amount of $805,000, $860, and to authorize the city manager to execute the escrow document.
Ms. Spivey.
And as council member from the ward right next door to this, I am also excited to second that motion.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, John. 9.3, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a construction contract AC 5963 with Sierra Nevada Construction in the amount of $521,007 for the 2023 preventative maintenance patch project, bid number 22/23-029, PWP-WA-2023-216. Amber.
Mayor, members of council, Amber Sosa, Transportation Manager. As introduced, this item for your consideration is a construction contract for our 2023 preventative maintenance patch project. The funding for this project is combined funds of FY23 and FY24, meaning the full funding for this project will be available as of July 1st of this year, 2023. This is an annual project that you see every year that involves the permanent patching on roadway segments in the city's transportation maintenance plan. With this project, we will treat over 15,000 linear feet of wide cracks and 27,000 square foot of larger patching. These types of projects do tend to be spread out throughout the city. So these three maps, if I could have the screen, please, are to give you an idea of where this work is occurring. This first one we're calling the Vintage Hills area, and you'll see Sparks Boulevard just to the east, and this is just north of the intersection of Shadow and Sparks Boulevard. The next area we're calling the Turnberry area. You'll see Sparks Boulevard curving to the left of this area with Vista over again to the east. So this neighborhood is near the Kylie Golf Course. And the third and fourth areas we're calling the Silverton area and the Poco Bueno area. You'll see Vista just down to the south of this area and Wingfield Parkway leading into these neighborhoods. For this project, we received two bids. Sierra Nevada Construction submitted the low bid, which was underneath our engineer's estimate at $521,007. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Questions from the council? Okay. And I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Dare.
Yes, I move to approve construction contract with Sierra Nevada Construction in the amount of $521,007 for the 2023 preventative maintenance patch project, bid number 22/23-029, PWP-WA-2023-216.
Vanderwell.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Amber. 9.4, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a construction contract AC 5964 in the amount of $780,000 with Mount Rose Heating and Air, Inc. for the Alf Sorensen Community Center Lobby and Preschool HVAC Replacement Project.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of council. My name is Brandon Miles, Parks Development Coordinator. The vicinity map above shows the project location at Alf Sorensen Community Center highlighted in red. It is just north of Bering Boulevard and just east of Reed High School. The project is for demolition and replacement of the existing HVAC system at Alf Sorensen Community Center that services the lobby, offices, and preschool. The project includes installation of new air handler unit, VAV valves, or boxes, ductwork piping, and additional new water heater room. There will also be electrical, structural, ceiling tile replacement, and flat work to support the new unit. The existing unit has been failing over recent years due to its 42 years in service, and this project will bring much-needed upgrades to the temperature controls at one of our most popular facilities. The facility will remain open for pool and gym use, and the preschool will be relocated to the Sparks Recreation Center for a portion of the project. One bid was received from Mount Rose Heating and Air Conditioning in the amount of $780,000 which includes a $50,000 force account. For reference, the engineer's cost estimate was $650,000. With that being the end of my presentation, I can answer any questions.
Okay, questions from the council?
So you said the pool and gym will remain open?
Correct.
But the preschool, do you anticipate a timeline on how long the job will take, and they'll be able to get the preschool moved back over?
So I believe the job is estimated for 120 calendar days.
Okay.
We don't anticipate the preschool will be relocated for the entirety of the project, but we're not entirely sure yet.
Okay, perfect, thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, it's once again the pool. Al Sorensen, a hole in the water into which money pours. A body of water. Anyways, any further discussion? I'm looking for a motion. Anybody?
Is this your word?
This is my ward. I just keep making all the motions, but it is my ward. After this, I can take a break, but I move to approve construction contract AC 5964 in the amount of $780,000 with Mount Rose Heating and Air Incorporated for the Alf Swanson Community Center HVAC replacement project.
Mr. Anderson.
I'll second the motion.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brendan. 9.5, consideration discussion of possible approval of a professional services contract, AC 5961, with Premier Inspection Services in the amount not to exceed $340,000 for contract building inspection services in fiscal year 2024. Mr. Miranda.
Thank you, Mayor Lawson and council members. Good afternoon. For the record, Mark Miranda, building official, Sparks Building and Safety. Today I'm here seeking your approval of professional contracts for building inspection services through Premier Inspections for the amount not to exceed $340,000. The contract provides for a building division continued services of our inspection services, and it will enable our staff to deliver inspections in a timely manner by augmenting our inspection staff. So without any further ado, if you guys want to have any questions, be happy to take them.
Questions from the council? Mark, this is the same company we've been using, right?
Yes, yes. We've had these contractors, inspectors for, I think, 4 years.
My only question is currently, how are we doing? Are we finding ourselves that we're keeping up with everything? We find ourselves a little behind right now. Obviously, we're hiring somebody for a purpose, but are we doing okay keeping up? Or are we
I
just
think we are
anticipating?
doing a really good job keeping up on the inspection side. Recently, we did have, we lost one of our contract inspectors to Washoe County, but we are kind of in a little bit of a lull right now, so we're keeping up and we're doing inspections within 24 hours of request.
Oh, thank you. You're doing a fine job. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Hey, anyone else? All right, looking for a motion then. Mr. Abbott.
I move to approve professional services contract AC-5961 with Premier Inspection Services in an amount not to exceed $340,000 for contract building inspection services in fiscal year 2024.
Mr. Anderson.
A second?
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote. I was running a different meeting. I was at the RTC meeting, just right there.
Yeah, you got a lot.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mark. You're up again.
Yes.
9.6, consideration, discussion, possible approval of professional services contract AC 5962 with West Coast Code Consultants, Inc. in an amount not to exceed $300,000 for building permit, plan review, and inspection services for fiscal year 2024. Mr. Miranda.
Thank you, Mayor Lawson and council members. For the record, Mark Miranda, building official, Sparks Building Safety. So I'm here to request your approval for professional services for contracting and inspection through West Coast Consulting in the amount not to exceed $300,000. This one is a little bit different in terms of they augment our plan review services, where we've only got one plan reviewer. So for like an example would be Hug High. We sent them Hug High and they were able to turn that around in 20 days, which is a great big project. They also bring expertise to our building division where they specialize in electrical, plumbing, mechanical. And so they bring a team to the forefront when we do big projects like schools, apartments, things like that, and it doesn't backlog our current plan review process. So with that, I'll take any questions.
All right, questions from the council? Ms. Vanderwell.
Thank you. How many years have we been using West Coast?
Since we've been using West Coast since 2017.
Okay. Do we ever send it out to make sure, an RFP, just to make sure that, we are getting our value worth, or there's not a new company out there with the same?
After we got through the Great Recession and we started to rebuild, and we were having issues with finding qualified people for plan review. So we had kind of outside the box thinking on going to this third party review. And we've really held the line as far as costs go. They haven't asked for an increase since then. Currently in our budget, we anticipated inflationary impact like we've all had. And so we kind of increased that, what we're asking for today, by about 5%. And so they did ask for that 5%. Okay. So we are, as far as like RFP, we did that at the beginning when we were looking for a third party, but we haven't done it since. So if that's something that you guys want me to look into, I'd be happy to do it.
I wanted to know how long, and I just want to make sure that, of course, we're being charged fairly. So
I
it
think,
sounds
yeah, I
like
think we
you're
are, and I think
staying on it.
we're holding the line on
Okay.
costs.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Anderson.
I move to approve professional services contract AC 5962 with West Coast Consultants, Inc. in the amount not to exceed $300,000 for the building permit plan review and inspection services for fiscal year 2024.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. They're
Thank
way
you.
ahead of me. They had already voted by the time I said all that.
Thank you very much, Mayor and council members. It's much
Thanks, Mark.
appreciated.
Thank you.
9.7, consideration, discussion, and possible approval to purchase technology refresh equipment from Summit Partners LLC, Dell Technologies, CDW-G, and other vendors as needed from the National Association of State Procurement Officials, Value Point contract in an approximate amount of $1,569,500 for fiscal year 2024.
Thank you, Mayor. Rich Brown, for the record, your IT manager. The first item I have for you this afternoon is the fiscal year 24 plan for our ITCIP refresh spending. I presented this to you first at the CIP workshop in March. And I'll go over quickly what the highlights of the plan for fiscal 24. The biggest expense on that by far is going to be the replacement of our firewalls at a little bit over 56% of the total $1.5 million. These devices are our primary defense pieces of equipment we have in the city to protect the city from the open internet. And one of the key things we're looking forward to for this particular generation of devices is that the existing generation we use today has become very underpowered relative to the software that we can have on those devices today. So staff is keen to get their hands on those to start making use of the features that we can't today. Another highlight I'm on there is, as part of the CIP, I also mentioned the cloud migration we have underway. That is a 4-year process. So there is one piece of infrastructure, specifically servers and storage, that will need to be replaced before the cloud migration is complete, and that will serve our police department. We're basically rebuilding their environment, their servers and storage environment from scratch, so that'll be the last, hopefully, on-premise infrastructure upgrade out there. And last but not least on the CIP refresh is just the number of desktops and laptops we replaced throughout the city. We're looking at 139 total devices for fiscal '24. And as in previous years, many of these individual transactions don't rise to the level of requiring council approval at $50,000. However, in aggregate, they often do. So as in previous years, it's felt prudent to bring those before you for consideration and approval. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, questions from the council? Mr. Dare.
I know we went over CIP, it just, when we see these kind of numbers, if there's someone out there wondering, they just look like, wow, that's a lot of money, but we have so much technology shifting and changing. But with even some of the changes we're seeing, this is the beginning of continued more. Am I correct on that? I mean, we still have a lot of things to keep up with and probably some things to spend coming. Every year we have so much we set aside for these
Absolutely.
purposes.
Yes.
It's probably what I'm trying to share, and the importance of this. It keeps us safe. When it comes to cybersecurity, that's a piece of this. You said firewalls, and then we're also storing our stuff off-site. I would just, almost for our just community's sake, when you look at these costs, what are some of the best bang for the buck we're getting out of this, if we say it that way?
I guess the best way I can answer that is specifically on the firewalls, is that it keeps us using equipment that is at the absolute bleeding edge. Because in the cybersecurity world, and I won't delve too deeply into how these things work, being at the bleeding edge is really the only option. If you fall behind, as is the case in certain other jurisdictions, fiscal year '23 has been a very bad year for state and locals in the cybersecurity front. And in almost every single case where there's been a significant cybersecurity event, there has been aged equipment, aged software to blame. So keeping us on the bleeding edge as much as we can is critical.
Yeah, that's one thing that we've seen across the country and even other places, but that as a target at times. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of
Appreciate
course.
it.
Anyone else? Well, I'm all in favor of that. I let my password expire. It took less than an hour for me to get hacked. I mean,
Yeah, it
that
doesn't take
quick.
long. It does not take
So
long.
it's a big deal to provide that security. All right, well, I'm looking for a motion then. Mr. Abbott.
I move to approve the purchase of technology refresh equipment from Summit Partners LLC, Dell Technologies, CDW-G, or other vendors as needed from the National Association of State Procurement Officials Value Point contract in an approximate amount of $1,569,500 for fiscal year 2024.
Ms. Spivey.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, 9.8, you're still up, Rich. Consideration, discussion, of possible approval to purchase information technology maintenance contracts and software licensing renewals from Summit Partners LLC, CDW-G, or other vendors as needed in the approximate amount of $481,905 for fiscal year 2024.
Thank you, Mayor, members of council. Once again, Rich Brown, your IT manager, for the record. This last item I have for you is this, as stated, is the item to request authorization to renew all of our support and maintenance contracts for the various systems we employ here at the city to keep things running along nice and smoothly. A couple highlights of that would be our server virtualization software by a company called VMware. Our backup systems from a company called Commvault, our email scanning systems, things of this nature that we use to ensure that all of the devices we employ can be maintained up to the current spec for which they're eligible. As with the previous item, many of these individual contracts and renewals don't rise to the level of council approval at $50,000 or more, but again, as in aggregate, they do. And I'm here to present those for your approval. And with that, I would be happy to take any questions.
Questions from the council? All right, seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Vanderwell.
I move to approve the purchase of information technology maintenance contracts and software licensing renewals from Summit Partners LLC, CDW-G, or other vendors as needed in the approximate amount of $481,905 for fiscal year 2024.
Mr. Anderson.
Second the motion?
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Rich.
Thank you.
9.9, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of a reimbursement to the city of Reno for Sparks' share of the construction contract with TNT Industrial Contractors, Inc. for the thickened waste activated sludge improvements project at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount not to exceed $2,761,000, with Sparks' share being $866,125.70. You couldn't negotiate out the 70 cents, Casey?
Tried my best.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right, well, good afternoon, Mayor Lawson and members of council. For the record, my name is Casey Menser. I'm the treatment plant manager at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility. One quick thing, item 9.9 and 9.10 are related items. With your permission, I'd like to present them both together. All right, so these two items relate to a single project, and that is to provide improvements to Tumwater's thickened waste-activated sludge process. What that is really, so Tumwater's secondary treatment process, it utilizes microorganisms known as activated sludge to remove pollutants from the wastewater. And once those microorganisms effectively eat those pollutants, we then remove them or waste them out of the now cleaned water, and then we thicken them and prepare them for further solids processing. So that equipment, where we do that, it was built in 1978, and a lot of it is really antiquated. It's old. It's not easy or, darn near impossible to find parts when we have to, carry out any kind of replacement. And so we're looking at this project to replace all of that outdated equipment and rehabilitate other kind of degraded components that we have. We received 3 bids for this particular project, with TNT Industrial Contractors being the lowest responsive bidder. This was lower than the engineer's estimate, so we were excited to see that. So every year, Tumwharf does a sort of a risk assessment on all the different projects we have out at the treatment plant, and then we prioritize what projects need to be done first. This one was ranked as number 5. The other 4 are currently underway, and so as a result of that, this is planned construction and rehabilitation work, and it is part of the Tumwaterf approved CIP. This particular council item, the 9.9, is seeking the reimbursement to the City of Reno for Sparks' share of conducting that construction, that being with TNT Industrial Contractors. The item that you see in 9.10 on the agenda, that is for the construction, administration, and engineering support services that will be associated with this project. And that is being awarded to HDR Engineering. They were the design engineer on this project and have an immense amount of familiarity with the project and with Tumwaterf at large. So with that, I'm happy to answer any question about either of these.
Questions from the council? You did such a great job, Casey. All right, let's take a vote on 9.9 first. Mr. Dare.
I move to approve a reimbursement to the City of Reno for Sparks' share of construction contract AC 5958 with TNT Industrial Contractors Incorporated for the thickened waste activated sludge improvements project at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount not to exceed $2,761,000, with Sparks' share being $866,125.70. Thank you.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. 9.10, consideration, discussion, possible approval of an agreement AC 5958 with HDR Engineering, Inc. in the City of Reno and the City of Reno for the construction administration services of the thickened waste activated sludge improvements project at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount not to exceed $332,960, with Sparks' share being $104,449.55. Anything to add, Casey? Any questions from the council? All right, looking for a motion. Mr. Anderson.
I move to approve Agreement AC 5958 with HDR Engineering Incorporated in the City of Reno for construction administration services for the thickened waste activated sludge improvement project at Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount not to exceed $332,960, with share from Sparks being $104,449.55.
Mr. Abbott.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. All right, 9.11, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of an agreement AC 5959 with New Voda LLC and the City of Reno for rental of pilot testing equipment and limited technical support of the mobile organic biofilm pilot project at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $271,700, with Sparks' share being $85,232.29. Casey.
Mayor Lawson, members of council, thank you again. For the record, Casey Menser, treatment plant manager at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility. With your permission, items 9.11 and through 9.13 all relate to the same pilot project, and if I could give one presentation.
Please.
Excellent. So this is a really exciting project for us at the plan, and this all stems back from the facility plan that Telmorph had conducted and finalized in 2020. That facility plan looking at how Telmorph can accommodate the future growth for the area and get up to the build-out capacity that we need to. And so within that facility plan, they identified a number of different types of technology that we could possibly convert to do better, by going that route. And when I say do better, I mean, spend less money on power or chemicals or possibly have better resiliency. And it was identified within our facility plan that rather than continuing to build out in the way that we currently are, possibly converting to this type of technology known as aerobic granular sludge. And in this case, it's being carried out through what is known as mobile organic biofilm. So in late 2020, if you recall, staff had come before council and had been seeking approval to conduct a small-scale pilot test of this aerobic granular sludge that went on for about 16 months. And during that time period, we were running about 10-ish gallons a minute through a pilot unit that we had on site, and we saw we got reduction of all the pollutants that we were trying to get. And so the technology looked really promising, and we really wanted to continue the next step for investigating that. And so what we're looking at doing is inducing that aerobic granular sludge growth in our existing secondary treatment process with this mobile organic biofilm. And effectively what that is it's this flour, it's called kanaf. They grind it up into a pulp and then they throw it into the soup. And at that point, it functions as a home for these microorganisms to grow on. And so you can actually have so much more biological activity and so much more treatment capacity in our existing infrastructure. And so what these three council items are looking at doing is the first one being with Navoda. That is the purveyor of this mobile organic biofilm technology. They are going to be providing a screening unit and a series of pumps to be able to, as well as the kanaf flour, that crushed up flour pulp, they're going to be adding that and then providing a screen so that way we can screen it out and keep it in the treatment process, as well as providing us some limited technical support. 9.12 is a contract with Jacobs Engineering. They'll be providing us pilot support. So Jacobs Engineering will be helping us with some of the modeling efforts and designing what kind of sequences we might want to be looking at. So what kind of set points we would be running and how the overall pilot project would function and how we can get the most amount of information for us to make these informed decisions moving forward. And then they would be looking at what it would mean for us if we did this full scale for the entire treatment plant. The last contract that is before you, item 9.13, is with UNR, and UNR is going to be looking at doing a lot more of the very nuanced laboratory work to be helping inform these modeling efforts. They're going to be looking at very specific things about the biology and about the rates at which removal of pollutants takes place. And so they're going to be doing a lot of those samples sampling and the analysis on there, at their lab, things that our chemists aren't super familiar with or may not have the capacity to do in their, normal day-to-day, workday. So these three contracts are looking at really what that means for the future for Tumwharf. It's the next step of a several-year effort at examining this technology. Now, when I say pilot, I know that I said that the previous one we did was about 10 gallons a minute. And when we think about pilots at Tumwharf, they're like 10, maybe 30 gallons a minute. We're going to be doing this for approximately 25% of our influent flow, which is 7 million gallons a day. So we're really ready to ramp up our investment into looking at this technology. And it's very exciting because, as I said, it could mean a whole variety of really positive things for the treatment plan and for the ratepayers in the community. So with that, I'm super happy to answer any and all questions.
Mr. Abbott, did you want to add anything to his presentation?
A little. There's no question. Just more comments. Just want to thank you on that tour the other day when you were talking about this and we could actually see the basins and how much of this works the way that we want it to, how much real estate it'll save at the plant, which just want to commend you and your staff for coming up with this. And
thank you.
It's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
So first off, I want to say you started your presentation with the word of exciting, and usually exciting and wastewater don't go hand in hand. Yeah, but I want to commend you and everyone that's been involved in this project because again, the tour that you gave us, it was enlightening, and I appreciate hearing more about it. I was wondering if you could share, because I'm looking at it, and we're getting ready to approve about what will come to as a community about $500,000 in expenditures for this test. So what are we looking at on the potential savings side? If you could share a little bit more on that side.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the big things is power savings. So if this were to be successful and if this were to be the way that Tumwharf, ultimately converted its technology, it would create a certain part of our process. It would make it relatively obsolete, and that particular portion of the process is a major power hog. It uses about 25% of our electrical cost, and our power bill is somewhere in the neighborhood of about $2.5 million a year. And so cutting out, 25% of that would be significant in terms of annual savings. Granted, there might be some give and take where, we might have to put a little bit more power into one area of the plant, but definitely way more on the plus than minus side there. And then the other thing are chemical savings. So when we look at how much money we spend to be able to remove all the pollutants in, let's say, a less modern way or a more inefficient way. The biggest chemical expenditure that we have at the plant is a chemical called methanol, and it is used to remove nitrogen, which is one of the targeted pollutants here. And we spend about $2.2 million annually on methanol, and this could cut it by a half. It could cut that by 75%. We're not sure, and that's what we're going to be looking at doing. But those are incredible annual savings. And then it could also defer significant capital projects, because if we can do more in our existing infrastructure, that biomass is really heavy, and so it can take more flow through the existing tanks and not wash it out. And so we could perhaps, not need to build, this set of tankage, for 5 years or defer it for 7 years or however long. So there's significant deferred capital as well as operational savings, potentially.
Awesome. Thank you for the explanation, and I would concur. That's exciting. So appreciate it.
Mr. Dare.
I wish you were my science teacher in high school. I learned more from you than I did many years. Anyway, with that said, I do want to say thank you again for walking us through and for your team. I know Mr. Drinkwater was there for years, and he did a great job. And watching transitions are not always easy to do in such a manner, but you've definitely transitioned, and your team's right there with you. So thank you. It really helps in voting for this. Sometimes you might wonder out there, how do they just say yes to this kind of money? Well, we do a lot of work before we get here to go and see what we're talking about and go and watch it. And you did a great job already showing us what we're doing here. And so it's amazing. So great job, and I appreciate your excitement.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Thanks, Casey.
Thank you.
Very well done. You do make it more simplified for the football player here anyways. All right, with that, I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Bybee.
Be happy to make a motion, and I'd also like to add, I appreciate our continued work with the University of Nevada. Has done so many incredible things together with the plan. I think they're a valuable partner, and it's a win both ways. So with that, I move to approve the agreement AC 5959 with Nuvoda LLC and the City of Reno for rental of pilot testing equipment and limited technical support, the mobile organic biofilm pilot project at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $271,700, with Spark share being $85,232.29.
Mr. Rabbit.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. 9.12, consideration, discussion, of possible approval of an agreement AC 5960 with Jacobs Engineering Group, Inc., the City of Sparks, and the City of Reno for pilot assistance services for the mobile organic biofilm pilot project at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $197,246, with Sparks share being $61,876.07. Anything to add, Casey? All right, with that, I'm looking for a motion then. Mr. Dare.
I move to approve agreement AC 5960 with Jacobs Engineering Group Incorporated, the City of Sparks, and the City of Reno for pilot assistance services for the mobile organic biofilm pilot project. I never thought I'd say that in my life. At the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $197,246, with Sparks share being $61,876.07. Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
I'll second that.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. 9.13, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of an agreement AC 5966 with the University of Nevada, Reno, the City of Sparks, and the City of Reno for investigation and modeling simulation services for the mobile organic biofilm pilot project at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $149,612, with Spark share being $46,933.28. Any further, Casey? You're good? I'm looking for a motion. Ms. Bybee?
I move to approve the agreement AC 5966 with the University of Nevada, Reno, the City of Sparks, and the City of Reno for investigation and modeling simulation services for the mobile organic biofilm pilot project at the Truckee Meadows Water Reclamation Facility in the amount of $149,612, with Spark share being $46,933.28.
Ms. Vanderwell?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, Casey. 9.14, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of an engagement agreement AC 5956 with Ogletree Deacons for organizational assessment of the City of Sparks to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion within the workspace at a cost of $65,000 in fiscal year '23. Ms. Valdez.
Good afternoon, Mayor, council members. Jill Valdez, Human Resources Director for the record. I never thought I'd say it would be a hard act to follow after hearing about sludge, but hopefully I can make this one a little bit exciting. In the past year, as you know, Human Resources has had some difficulty finding staff for ourselves, as well as some other difficulties in the labor market. And we have been using vacancy savings with CPS HR, which was something that came before you earlier in the year. We're looking to do something similar with Ogletree Deacons. They are a law firm with a local representative that services us, and they also have national and international expertise that they can bring to bear. What we're looking for is an organizational assessment, and the deliverables that provides us. Number one is something that Human Resources could benefit from having assistance, which is updating our policies. So that's something that we have to do on a regular basis. It's time, and they can assist us with that and bring to bear experience from the the national level to show us things that are most effective. They're also able to use the organizational assessment to give us targeted ideas for areas where we need improvement. Some of that is beneficial for equity and inclusion, but often when you do an organizational assessment, it's good for the organization as a whole. So we have something called Learn, that is a training platform as part of our software. Something like this will help us to give targeted follow-up training as needed, as opposed to a one-size-fits-all. The way that they will conduct an organizational assessment is they start with an employee survey. That is followed by 5 to 10 focus groups with employees. And to round it off, they will identify approximately 30 individuals at the city for one-on-one interviews. Once that's complete, they'll be able to provide human resources with their report, the finalized recommendations for updated policies and procedures, and discuss anything as needed about where to go from there. The cost is $65,000. The plan is to use vacancy savings from fiscal '23 for that cost. The timeline is approximately 2 to 6 months. The 6-month timeline at the outset, simply because it can be difficult for the city to schedule focus groups for people across our organization. We have a lot of special events that happen in the summer. We have many other trainings, so the limitation on that is just staff availability. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Right, questions from the council? Okay. You have a question?
I know he does.
Ms. Faderwell, she beat you to the punch.
Well, if you're going to look at me and dare me. Was there an RFP sent out on this?
There was not.
Okay. I did express this when we met earlier, that we have contracted before with Dr. Tiffany Young, who happens to have a doctorate in diversity and equity and inclusion, and she also happens to sit on the Nevada Equal Rights Commission. So I guess some of the things that are being prescribed in here, we have somebody that we have worked with, that has worked with the city and worked with some of our employees, and I was just curious why we didn't reach out to her to see if she could do the same scope of work for us.
Yes, we have used Dr. Tiffany, and we look forward to our partnership with her. That local partnership is important. She's been able to give us the foundation for what we've done recently at the city, providing cultural competency to all of the employees. The supervisors received a 2 to 4 hour training. The line level employees received a 2-hour training. That took the past year to accomplish that. So this is not in any way meant to take away from what Tiffany did. In fact, one of the deliverables I would hope to see is, an evaluation of whether there's any more focused follow-up that we could do after the organizational assessment. Some of what this specialist does, they're really a specialist in this area, is that they look at data, they provide an analysis that I'm not aware of in our local market, but it's not meant to take away from that work with the local partners. It's supposed to augment what we're doing with our local partners.
Mr. Dare.
Yeah, so I have a few concerns with this, and it'll lead probably that I'm not going to support this. So one is, does this run through our advisory board that we have with our equity inclusion group?
The Equity and Inclusion Group advises the city primarily on things external, not the employee-related matters. So to date, we don't run employee-related human resources specific matters through that group.
I thought one of the purposes was to help us hire when we started that group. So that's one of the pieces. We're not to go deep into it. I'm just trying to share so you understand. I think I appreciate the heart behind equity, inclusion, and diversity and all those conversations. Probably my larger, I do have a problem that didn't go through advisory group. Personally, I think we have a group. I think we use our group. They have a survey that's out there, and I know that's external. I do know that. However, I think they are included in my mind when we began that group was so they could have their hand a little bit in helping us make sure we're hiring and we're bringing on people and looking at some of our hiring practices, looking at some of our stuff. That was a piece of that to my memory. The other portion is right now we are in the middle of an investigation. We all know this is a process we have started where there's going to be surveys going out to our people or some of that kind of thing. And so I'm a little concerned that we're mixing some stuff here that shouldn't be mixed at this time. I think HR, I want to see focused on finding, I want you to get the help you need. So if we're spending money on finding the help to do things that you can't hire right now, which we've talked about, I'm more comfortable with that than us adding another layer of equity, diversity, inclusion. And I know you say there'll be some ancillary good things that come out of it that's helpful. I appreciate that, but I'd rather have direct. I'd rather not be ancillary. I'd rather, and then I also will agree with my other city council person down there. I do teaching on diversity, equity, inclusion, and there are different approaches. And so finding other people come in, sometimes you can find yourself waving around in different layers. And I'm a little concerned that we might find ourselves there. So like I said, I have a lot of concerns around this, but the two biggest just to share is I think that it should fly. Anything with this conversation, there's no reason not to bring in that group, is my number one. But secondly, in the season that we are in, we have a lot of things going on that HR, we want it to run well. I would love to see us have some assessments for that, but I don't want it convoluted or any other distraction from that if we're going to spend money in that area. So.
Mr. Abbott.
It's a question I asked in our meeting, just, I guess what got us here? Was there something that triggered this, or is this being proactive or reactive?
We started looking at policies when my predecessor, Mindy Falk, the previous Human Resources Director, was with the city. She has done some of that work to help move us forward with the policies. It's time to look at policies. It is not something that we have had the staff to be able to continue. So our goal with this is to be proactive and to seek assistance, not just with the policies, but of course policies, we didn't want to just look at them for face value, but really think about what are some of the things we're trying to accomplish with the trainings that we've done with Tiffany Young and with others, and how can we make sure that those policies are not just standard, but they're best practice and they're in support of the end goal that we're trying to achieve.
Bybee.
I guess what I'm really trying to figure out, so does our current policies have never been reviewed to see if we are in compliance or updated with DEI work that we've been doing in the city?
The policies are updated on a regular basis. The last time that they were updated was 2020, but it was very specific to some legislative updates in the drug policy area. The last time that our policies were fully evaluated and changed was 2015.
Okay, so I'm trying to look for the benefit here. And on the employee survey, the focus groups, the interviews are all internal. Are those going to determine what the changes in policy are? Or is this group coming in to show you best practices that we don't currently have? Is it almost, because I know we're looking at a climate survey, which is community, but I kind of share what Councilman Dare is saying, that I feel a little scattered. You know, we did the work with Tiffany Young, which I think was amazing for staff, for internal. Now we have our advisory board, which is our external piece. And I'm just trying to look at what the benefit of this, if there is a benefit to the city, and what that is, and how we integrate it with everything else we're doing with diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Absolutely. So the climate survey will happen with members of the city of Sparks. It is not to our employees. It's looking for information and feedback from our residents on some specific topics that that committee came up with, that they wanted more information from the community so that they can help understand how can they best support our community. Which is, to date, has not been focused on human resources. I received the feedback from Councilman Dare that he would like to see that. That has not, to date, been the direction that I've received, but I'm happy to forward that on to Assistant City Manager Allison McCormick, who handles that particular committee. But there is a specific goal for the climate survey in the community that, as I understand it, does not cross paths with human resources. That being said, human resources is looking for several things out of this work. The policy work really is not dependent on the focus groups. The policy work is something where we're looking for their assistance with best practices, looking at what we have, making sure it's aligned with mission values of the city and what the city is trying to accomplish. The additional work, the focus groups, the survey of employees, the one-on-one interviews, that is looking for organizational assessment of how are we doing with some of our hiring practices? How are we doing with promotional practices? Are we preparing our internal employees to understand what it takes to promote within the organization? Are we providing them the support that they need, the guidance, the mentorship, the direction for classes? Do we have the right training in the right areas? Are there specific areas of the city, now that we've done broader training, are there some specific areas in the city where there is a need to go back and do targeted follow-up training in those areas? The goal of doing that is to make sure that our entire process throughout the organization is achieving what we'd like to achieve, and that when we talk about equity and inclusion in the entire hiring process, start to finish, that you're aligning your results that you want to see. Do you want to see a greater portion of females, for example, having that opportunity to move through the organization? Is the training, is the mentorship, the sponsorship that we have, and is that aligned at the city with what's necessary? And the best way to find that out is to talk to employees. Now, maybe that's targeted at women, but maybe it's just finding out that our employees aren't getting the feedback they need in a particular area of the city for how they could promote. So this would give us information about, one particular area so that we can provide additional support and training to those supervisors or to those managers so that they can provide, more mentoring. Maybe they don't know enough about what that means. More sponsorship for their employees so that their employees are able to go through the promotional process at the city of Sparks. So there is a lot going on, for sure. This is not meant to take away from anything that any other committee is doing. It is simply moving forward work that we're doing in human resources, trying to align things that we're already on track for, like our new Learn platform that has more training opportunities so that our supervisors are aware of what their needs are and how to use that tool. What other tools their folks need and how to use those tools for the most effective outcome.
Mr. Anderson.
Jill, could you let us know about the process that your department went through in choosing Ogletree and Deacons as the company we would work with?
Absolutely. I work with a legal partner outside of the city who provides assistance when needed for us, such as finding vendors. She has a wealth of knowledge about vendors available and different services that they provide. And in working with her, she identified this unique product through the Ogletree Deacons.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Do you and your staff have continuing education for any certifications?
Yes, so we do have continuing education, depending on which level my staff is. Many of them have certifications with the Society for Human Resources Management, HRCI, so we do have continuing education.
So on the continuing education, is DEI part of that continuing education?
You can take DEI courses as part of your continuing education. Yes.
And then I just have one more follow-up, Mr. Mayor. Have we looked at some of our departments that are doing DEI successfully, like our police department? And because I know they work through human resources, so have we worked with them to say, how are you working on identifying? Because the police department has done a very good job with DEI.
Yes, actually, the police department has a fantastic initiative called the 30 by 30 initiative, where they're trying to hire at least 30% females in the police office positions by 2030. And we do work with them regularly. One of the great things about that is they ask us questions. We collaborate with the police department in answering some of those human resources related questions, and they certainly give interesting ideas for things that we may want to look into to reach those goals. I think that what this would do would actually be beneficial to our 2030, our 30 by 30 initiative.
Okay, anyone else?
So Jill, are we, for the HR staff, are we fully staffed? Are you short positions? Where do we stand on staffing right now? And I think you just added someone, but where do we stand on staffing?
So we are adding a person on July 10th. We're excited to bring a new person on. And we have one additional position that is frozen.
Okay, I'm just asking because this is from a vacancy savings, and I just kind of feel you guys have so much work to do, and a lot of your work is very time intensive. And for me, it's like having those bodies there to do that work, it ranks a little bit higher than this program. Seems like an extra because we are, we've been doing DEI. I understand this is different, but the vacancy savings concerns me a little bit. So thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, anyone else? All right, I'm looking for a motion. Any kind of motion. I'm not seeing anything.
I'll try a motion.
Okay,
At this time, I move that we put a hold to this particular move and bring back, well, I won't tell you what to do that. I'll just say we'll put a hold on this particular move to look at other things. But anything that has to do with this, I do think should flow through our group that we have in place.
so Christopher, you got a new motion up there. Will you read that? If that's what your intention is?
I move, well, let me read it first.
Yeah. Make sure you read it, yes. There's devils in the details.
It's not saying put a hold on it.
It's fine, we can,
Just rechecking.
yeah.
Because I would second the hold.
yeah. Yeah, can we put a hold on it? I say, there's no question that there's importance in what you're bringing to the table, and I don't want you leaving here like, the word reject is not what we're trying to give to you today.
I'm satisfied with the word reject, I understand.
Okay, then I'll keep it. I move to reject the engagement agreement AC 5956 with Ogletree Deacons for an organizational assessment of the city of Sparks to promote diversity, equity, and inclusion with the workplace at a cost of $65,000, as long as the interpretation is correct. Thank you.
What was the last part?
I was just asking for her.
Okay.
She understood.
Ms. Vanderwell,
I'll second.
got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Being none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Jill. 9.15, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of resolution number 3429 to augment the FY '23 budget by $2,591,000 in the aggregate to provide appropriations for the general fund, fund number 1101, and the group health fund 1703.
Good afternoon, Mayor Lawson, members of the City Council. For the record, Wayne Weber, your budget manager. Today is our annual compliance agenda item for cost covering. We seek your approval to augment the fiscal '23 budget in the amount of $2,591,000 as outlined in item 9.15. In summary, we have 3 lines related to the general fund. The first one being $1 million contribution to the Northern Nevada Hopes Clinic. The second, $100,000 for senior support contributions approved by council and funded by the American Rescue Plan Act. And finally, in the general fund, $241,000 for mutual aid expenditures covered with mutual aid revenues. And last but not least, $1,250,000 to the group health fund to cover increased cost for health and prescription claims in the group health fund in fiscal '23. To add a little context to that, the group health fund is in good shape with an estimated ending fund balance of $6.8 million as reported in the city manager's recommendation. The fiscal '24 budget was increased to reflect the inflationary cost of the medical care. And with that, I can answer any questions.
Questions from the council? Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Anderson.
I move to approve resolution number 3429 to augment the fiscal year 2023 budget for $2,591,000 in aggregate to provide appropriations for general fund and the group health fund.
Mr. Rabbit.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. 9.16, consideration, discussion, and possible approval of Resolution 3426, authorizing the Financial Services Department to establish a minimum capitalization threshold of $10,000 for non-infrastructure assets and $100,000 for infrastructure assets.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I am Tiffany Pugh, a county manager over compliance for the record. This item I come before you on is related to the financial reporting of capital assets in the city's ACFR. A little background here. Capital assets, also known as fixed assets, refer to assets that are in operations with a useful life of 1 year or more. Governments have the ability to set a minimum dollar value as well as a minimum useful life at which outlays are capitalized rather than charged off as an expense. The dollar value combined with the minimum useful life is commonly known as the capitalization threshold. The City of Sparks has not increased our capitalization threshold from $5,000 since the implementation of GASB Statement 34 in fiscal year 2003. I'm here to request an increase to this level, which would place Sparks in line with similar government agencies considering our size, as well as reduce the administrative costs associated with tracking and recording these items. City staff is seeking council's authorization to increase this level effective fiscal year '24, so July 1. We are proposing 2 asset classes. The first, for non-infrastructure, we're proposing an increase from $5,000 to $10,000. Secondly, infrastructure assets, we're proposing an increase from $5,000 to $100,000. In conclusion, Many similar government agencies have established thresholds above $5,000 and significantly higher for infrastructure assets. The proposed thresholds would place us at a comparable level considering our size and activity, as well as save us time. With that, I can answer any questions.
Questions from the council? Mr. Dare.
So we've had a lot of conversations about Gatsby and this whole, I'm sorry, Jeff Kroenke. He's tried to explain this fully to us, but I just want to make sure of this because I think this is a deep well that I don't want to go fully down. But this money will be just set aside into some funding, or are
It
we
doesn't cost us anything. This is just a financial reporting issue.
just
So-
reporting
Yep.
issues?
Rather than expensing the asset or booking it as a capital asset or capitalizing it, we would expense it. So it's just a presentation issue.
And this saves us money?
It would
You
save
said
us
in
time.
tracking.
It saves us time. So, because now essentially the assets that fall in the bucket between 5,000 and 10,000, we can expense those rather than booking them as an asset, giving them a number, inventorying them every year, and all of the fun accounting that goes
I'm going to
along
trust
with it.
that all of that. We're not spending money, which I was not even.
It's just saving staff
Thank
time.
you, that's
Saving
helpful.
staff time.
That's a good answer. All of it's a good answer. I still think whoever created this whole thing needs to go see Jeff, so.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else? All right, looking for a motion. Ms. Spivey.
I move to approve Resolution Number 3426, authorizing the Financial Services Department to increase the capitalization threshold to $10,000 for all non-infrastructure assets and $100,000 for all infrastructure assets effective in fiscal year '24.
Ms. Vanderwell.
I'll second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, 9.17, first reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is the first reading of Bill 2812, an amendment to Section 10.48.030, parking of oversized vehicles, an amendment to Section 9.40.040, solicitation of ride, business or contribution from driver or occupant of vehicle prohibited, an amendment to Section 9.48.030, unlawful to camp on public property, general provisions of the Sparks Municipal Code, and the adoption of Section 10.48.250, human habitation of vehicles on public property, the adoption of Section 10.48.260, obstructive uses of public sidewalks, right-of-way, and public streets are prohibited, the adoption of Chapter 9.61, use of generators and fires, the adoption of Section 9.61.10, outdoor fires and portable open flame devices, the adoption of Section 9.61.20, blow torches and propane tanks or containers, and the adoption of Section 9.61.30, portable generators. A public hearing will be held and Bill 2812 will be acted upon at the regular meeting of the Sparks City Council on Monday, July 24th, 2023 at 2 p.m. in the Sparks City Council Legislative Building. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Moving on to item 10, public hearing and action items unrelated to planning and zoning, 10.1. Madam Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is public hearing, consideration, and possible approval of resolution number 3427, authorizing the Financial Services Department to establish an inter-fund loan to the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Fund and/or the Community Development Block Grant Fund and/or the Sparks Grants and Donations Fund from the general fund as needed during fiscal year '24.
Tiffany.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor and members of council. Again, I am Tiffany Pugh, a county manager over compliance for the record. This is another compliance issue. This is an annual request from our department where we come to you and ask for the opportunity to establish an interfund loan should we need it in fiscal year '24 from the general fund to our 3 grant funds. This is also allows us to have the opportunity to hold a public hearing in advance as required by Nevada revised statutes for all interfund loans. The 3 funds we're asking for are our grant funds, the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Fund, the Community Development Grant Fund, and the Sparks Grants and Donation Fund. Each of these is operated on a reimbursement basis, so there might be periods where cash goes negative. But having cash negative in a fund, even for a day, is a violation of the Nevada revised statutes. So having this interfund loan available would allow us to manage our cash flow as well as stay in compliance with the law. The terms of the loan, should we need it, would be an interest-free loan from the general fund, not to exceed $1 million and for a period of less than 30 days. There's no cost to the city for this loan also. In conclusion, we request the opportunity to establish an interfund loan in advance for fiscal year '24, should we need it, conduct a public hearing as required by Nevada revised statutes. With that, I can answer any questions.
Any questions from the council? All right, this is a public hearing, and anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? All right, we'll bring it back to the dais. I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Dare.
I move to approve Resolution Number 3427, authorizing the Financial Service Department to establish an interfund loan to the Community Development Block Grant Entitlement Fund and/or the Community Development Block Grant Fund and/or the Sparks Grants and Donations Fund from the general fund as needed during FY24.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, please vote. No aye. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
10.2, Madam Clerk, public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is public hearing, consideration, and possible approval of an agreement, AC 5968, between the City of Sparks and the Sparks Police Supervisory Protective Association Sergeants for the period of July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2025, with an estimated cost to the city of $298,711 in fiscal year '24, and a range of $154,454 to $271,159 in fiscal year '25.
Valdez.
Mayor, council members, Jill Valdez, Human Resources Director for the record. With your permission, I'd like to give one presentation that covers the next two items. This past year, the city entered into collective bargaining agreements and had good faith negotiations with both the police sergeants and the police lieutenants groups. And the items are almost identical in the scope of the changes to their agreements. First of all, they're both 2-year agreements. Year one, there is a recommended base pay increase of 5% overall. That 5% includes two things. First, a 1.5% to account for uniform pay, as uniform pay as a flat dollar amount is removed. And in addition, a 3.5% cost of living increase for that total of 5%. Year two, the COLA, or cost of living increase, would be based upon the CPI in that year in a range of no less than 2.5% and no more than 5.5%. If the actual CPI were over 6.5%, then the parties agree to reopen and go back to the negotiations table over the base pay amount. On the first year, additionally, there is a 2.5% step increase at the top of the pay range after the COLA is applied. This is because the city's bottom range in both of these contracts is competitive, but at the top it was felt that a 2.5% increase step was needed to bring that competitive. There is also a provision to maintain a separation between base pay rates, so that between police officers, top of range, and police sergeant, bottom of range, and sergeant, top of range, police lieutenant, bottom of range, it's good practice to avoid compression. So the contract would provide for an assurance that there wouldn't be compression. The contracts also increase education pay and make changes to special pays, and provide clarifying language about the HOPE team and the neighborhood policing unit team, and provide reopening language in case when the police officers group finishes their negotiations, if their special assignment pay language is not consistent with this language. There's also a small provision to remove a 5-day waiting period in acting pay. It is difficult Administratively, it's a burden to track, and over the 25-plus year career of these officers, sergeants and lieutenants, it just is inconsequential in comparison with the burden. Excuse me. There is no longevity change. However, if the police officer group has a change in longevity, there is a provision to make a change in these contracts as well. Travel pay, there's an agreement to meet and confer to discuss travel pay so that it makes sense and that there aren't disincentives for individuals to travel together. The deferred compensation matching increases to $150 per pay period. And military leave, although it doesn't affect any current members, is increased because there are police officers who are likely to promote into these positions who do have military reserve assignments. And so this is a benefit to those and keeps them promoting through our system. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, question from the council? All right, Mr. Anderson.
Jill, could you tell us how this will match us up to our community partners, the other agencies that we're trying to keep from losing officers to?
Yes, this is meant to be competitive overall with our community partners. We looked at such other partners as Reno, City of Reno, Washoe County, and Carson City. This helps us to keep the base pay in a competitive range, somewhere between where Carson City and Washoe County are and where City of Reno is.
Okay, anyone else? All right, this is a public hearing. I would open it up to the public. Anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. I'm looking for a motion. This is a motion on 10.2. Oh, Mr. Anderson.
I move to approve agreement.
I went on vacation. I'm supposed to be on vacation.
I move to approve agreement AC 5968 between City of Sparks and City of Sparks Police Supervisory Protective Association Sergeants for a period July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2025, with an estimated cost to the City of Sparks for $298,711 in fiscal year '24, and a range of $154,454 to $271,159 in fiscal year '25.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk, 10.3, public hearing.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is public hearing consideration and possible approval of an agreement AC 5969 between the City of Sparks and the Sparks Police Supervisory Protective Association Lieutenants for the period of July 1, 2023 through June 30, 2025, with an estimated cost to the city of $172,662 in fiscal year '24 and a range of $71,525 to $144,875 in fiscal year '25.
Okay, questions from the council? Anything to add, Jill?
Nothing.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
Public hearing?
Oh, all right, I'm getting ahead of myself. Public hearing. Anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. Now I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Dare.
I move to approve the agreement AC 5969 between the City of Sparks and Sparks Police Supervisory Protective Association Lieutenants for the period July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2025, with an estimated cost to the city of $172,662 in FY24 and a range of $71,525 to $144,875 in FY25.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, moving on to 11.1. Consideration, discussion, and possible action on a request for a conditional use permit to permit the storage, processing of hazardous materials and provide for the construction of a butane blending system of consisting of two 65,000 gallon, it's getting to be a long day, butane tanks and related equipment to process and inject butane into gasoline on approximately 30.2.88 acres, site located at 175 Nugget Avenue, Sparks, Nevada. APN is 032-220-62 in the I Industrial Zoning District, PCN 22-0009, CU 22-0002. Sienna.
Thank you, Mayor Lawson and members of the City Council. For the record, Sienna Reed, Planning Manager. Before you today is a request for a conditional use permit, or CUP, to allow the storage and processing of butane, of hazardous materials with the construction of a butane blending system. State law requires council be the final decision-making body for CUPs involving hazardous materials, which is different than a regular CUP where the Planning Commission's decision is final unless appealed to council. As proposed, the butane blending system would inject butane into gasoline at an existing fuel distribution facility located at 175 Nugget Avenue, which you can see outlined in red on this slide. The subject site has been used as a fuel distribution facility since the 1960s. On this next slide, you can see the proposed location of the butane blending system highlighted in red. It consists of various components. Those would be two 65,000-gallon butane tanks, a butane truck offload station, a truck driver weather shelter, a pump, two equipment houses, connective piping, as well as two injection skids. And just to orient you to the site a bit, here's the location of the truck driver weather shelter and offload station. Here's the location of the butane tanks. Here you can see connective piping, and then injection areas occur here as well as here. Primary access to the project site is provided from Nugget Avenue as well as Stanford Way, and internal access roads provide access and circulation throughout the site. To give you a bit of background on butane, butane can be blended into gasoline to create a winter fuel, and the request before you today would allow for the creation of that winter fuel at the existing fuel distribution facility located on the south side of Nugget Avenue. Additionally, butane is stored and processed as a liquefied gas because if it's released into the air, it shifts from a liquid to a gas. And then as a gas, butane is flammable or explosive in the presence of oxygen or an ignition source. Submitted with this CUP request was a fire safety analysis identifying hazards and documenting how the project design safety measures meet the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA, safety standards, the National Propane Gas Association, or NPGA, guidance document, as well as the NFPA Fire Safety Analysis Manual for LP gas storage facilities. Some of these safety measures include continuous monitoring and control by a programmable logic that notifies local and remote operators with visual and audible alarms and automatically shuts down the system if sensors detect a hazardous situation. An emergency shutdown system as well, with shutdown push buttons at multiple locations and atmospheric hydrocarbon detectors that are located in areas where butane leaks could occur. If one is found, those would automatically trigger an emergency alert or an emergency shutdown. Additionally, an interlock system that ensures proper grounding is in place between the delivery truck trailer and the offload station prior to any butane offloading occurring. Interlocks that prevent the butane tanks from being overfilled or overpressurized. Manual shutoff and isolation valves on all of the butane lines, as well as system-wide pressure and thermal relief valves that prevent pressure buildup. At the request of our fire department, the fire safety analysis was reviewed by a third-party technical expert who found that the proposed butane blending system project, as well as its proposed operations, would be compliant with all NFPA and MPGA safety standards. However, that third-party technical reviewer did recommend some additional site improvements, not only to protect the butane blending system, but also to remediate some existing site deficiencies, ultimately ensuring that
adequate access and safety measures are in place. Staff is recommending that some of these additional site improvements be completed prior to the issuance of a building permit for the butane blending system, and others be completed prior to the butane system operating. This is in line with the Planning Commission's recommendation, but is slightly different. So I wanted to highlight that all of the improvements, as recommended by the third-party reviewer, are the same, but the timing for some of them is earlier. The additional site improvements that you can see on this slide are required by a modified Condition of Approval 8 to be addressed prior to the issuance of a building permit for the butane blending system. They include fully accessible fire hydrants throughout the site, various roadway improvements. Those include paving certain unpaved access roads, as well as fixing potholes and grading for others. Ensuring foam chambers are provided for any existing storage tank that houses Class 1 flammable liquids. Ensuring fire department signage and building identification is clearly visible. Relocating an existing overhead fuel supply line to ensure that ladder truck operations aren't impaired. Ensuring access keys, Knox boxes, or other means of access are provided for all gates and buildings, and appropriately marking and closing abandoned pipes and conduit in proximity to the butane tanks. Moving on to this next slide are site improvements that would be required prior to a proposed condition of approval number 10. They would need to be addressed prior to the operation of the butane blending system, and they include installing auto-rotating monitor nozzles directed towards the butane tanks. The monitor nozzles deliver large flows of water when needed. New fire hydrants to be installed near the butane tanks, and driver offloading station, and undergrounding new proposed piping that would otherwise cross roads and gates. In addition, the project is required to install additional landscaping. Required landscaping for sites in our industrial zoning district is limited to a 10-foot wide landscaping strip along street frontages with street trees. As this site was developed without landscaping, it's considered substandard development. It needs to provide 65% of our current landscaping standards if it's intensified. So the applicant is proposing to do so by adding landscaping along a portion of Nugget Avenue within NDOT's right-of-way, and then also along Stanford Way, as you can see on this slide. All right, so with that, I'll wrap up the overview of the CUP request and shift gears into the conditional use permit findings that council needs to consider this afternoon. Here we'll start off with finding C1, which is compliance with our comprehensive plan. Here the proposed butane blending system advances goal MG1 and policy MG2 by supporting the city's existing non-residential land use base and facilitating investment in an existing fuels distribution facility located south of Interstate 80. As the butane blending system would operate within a developed site where city services are already being provided at acceptable levels, policy CF1 is also supported. And notably, the project site is located within the Sparks Fire Department's 4-minute travel time standard. Moving on to finding C2 that focuses on compatibility with adjacent properties. Information provided by the applicant indicates that a worst-case scenario where butane is released into the atmosphere is expected to impact an area 78 feet away from the butane release. So going through the properties to the north of the project site are developed with a mix of commercial and residential uses. They're located on the north side of I-80 and Victorian Avenue, and those uses are approximately 290 feet away from the project site. Properties to the south are developed with a variety of industrial uses, and they're located on the south side of the Union Pacific Railroad. That's between 320 and 710 feet away from the site. Properties to the east are developed with a hotel, medical marijuana cultivation, and warehousing and distribution uses on the east side of Stanford Way. As designed, the proposed butane blending system is located over 700 feet away from the hotel, over 300 feet away from the distribution warehouse, and over 200 feet away from the medical marijuana cultivation facility. And lastly, properties to the west are developed with warehouse and fuel distribution uses. The nearest portion of the butane blending system is located over 450 feet away from the closest building and fuel storage tank located on these properties. So acknowledging that the adjacent uses are located outside the 78-foot impact area for a butane release, staff believes the addition of the proposed butane blending system at this location is compatible with adjacent uses. Shifting here to finding C3 that relates to natural resource impairment and the population that can be supported by those resources. Here, natural resources that support population generally include air and water resources. As a gas, butane cannot impact water resources, and butane also has a low toxicity for human inhalation and is not anticipated to adversely impact air resources. Finding C4 focuses on how identified impacts of the project are addressed. Here, staff identified fire safety, outdoor storage, and landscaping. As previously discussed, to address the fire safety issues associated with this project, conditions 8 and 10 require the construction of numerous site improvements prior to the issuance of a building permit or prior to the operation of the butane blending system. Those will ensure that the butane blending system is protected and that existing site deficiencies are remediated. Condition 9 also prohibits the outdoor storage of combustibles waste, and conditions 4 and 5 relate to landscaping, with condition 4 requiring installation of landscaping consistent with the preliminary plans, and condition 5 requiring an encroachment and occupancy permit from NDOT for the portion of landscaping that's located in their right-of-way. Finding C5 requires public notice be provided in compliance with code and state law. On May 26th, notice of this meeting was published in the Reno Gazette-Journal and mailed to property owners, tenants, as well as mobile home park tenants within 1,000 feet of the subject site. Notices were also mailed to the Sparks Citizen Advisory Board, the administrator of the Division of Environmental Protection of the State Department of Conservation and Natural Resources, the State Fire Marshal, and the administrator of the Division of Industrial Relations of the Department of Business and Industry. In total, 1,096 mailed notices were provided, and to date, 2 phone calls have been received on this item, one from an individual that was seeking additional information, another from an individual that stated their opposition to the project, and 2 written letters of opposition were also received. One cites safety concerns and the other cites concerns about underground storage tank leaks and property value decreases. In addition to the 5 CUP findings that were just discussed, Council does also need to consider 2 findings that are set forth in Nevada revised statutes. The first is the health and safety of the residents of the city. As designed, the butane blending system complies with all laws and standards governing the storage and processing of butane, as well as the conditions of approval that address the recommendations of a third-party reviewer. The second is the safety and security of military installations. On this point, as the nearest military installation is located over 2 miles away from the project site, adverse impacts are not anticipated. So in terms of a recommended motion, the Planning Commission did recommend approval of this CUP request with 9 conditions, including all fire safety site improvements be complete prior to the operation of the butane blending system. As discussed throughout this presentation, changes to these conditions are recommended that modify condition 8 and add condition 10. These changes require the same site improvements recommended by the Planning Commission, just some of them need to be complete prior to the issuance of a building permit. So before wrapping up this presentation, I will definitely switch over to a red line version of those conditions so you can take a quick look at them. But do want to note that if appropriate, you have a motion to approve the conditional use permit request with the changes to the conditions as they've been presented throughout this presentation on this slide. So let me pull those up. Okay. So just to Review condition of approval number 8 and the changes there.
Got a little bigger, it's a little
Sure
hard
can.
to see.
Is that better?
There you go.
Make it even a little bit better. Okay, perfect, thank you. So for condition of approval number 8, here the main change is that the fire safety improvements are required prior to the issuance of any building permits for the butane blending system. You'll notice that certain components for the project have been struck. These actually have been moved over to proposed condition of approval number 10. So again, just changing the timing associated with the fire safety improvements. So things like the accessible fire hydrants, for instance, improvements to some of the access roads, secondary containment walls being evaluated, foam chambers for storing Class 1 flammable liquids, access improvements, as well as undergrounding of an overhead supply line. Those are all of the existing site deficiencies that are required by this condition to be addressed prior to issuance of a building permit. And then just to keep going, then we have the addition of condition of approval number 10. This just adds in those butane blending system components that were previously identified in condition 8. They still need to be constructed. They just need to be complete and operational prior to the operation of the butane blending system. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions on the condition of approval modifications. Certainly happy to answer any questions on the CUP request generally. We also have Chief White as well as Don Parsons from the fire department here with us today if you have any questions of them. And certainly the applicant is also here today.
Mayor Lawson, NRS 281A.420 requires public officers to disclose a potential conflict of interest. I wanted to make the following disclosure in the spirit of transparency. I'm employed by Pilot Thomas Logistics, who happens to be a large customer of both Kinder Morgan as well as Sunoco Partners, and that there could be seen as a possibility of a conflict of interest. However, I do believe that my voting or discussion of the topic would not be of concern because our company is not in any way profiting or me financially as well. So with that, I plan on discussing and voting on the topic.
Okay.
Start off now.
Thank you.
Since you have the floor.
Actually, I just thank you very much for the work that you guys did in this. I know you put in a lot of work to fix a lot of the gray areas. I appreciate the statement of the site improvements and what all has to be done even before a building permit is issued. So I want to say thank you for all that. Likewise, I want to show the appreciation for the applicant and them coming to us to help us understand more clearly what they were looking to achieve. The only question I actually have is in regard to the notifications that went out. I believe you said there were 1,500 of them. Was that correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, there were 1,096 mailed notices that were sent out.
And what area does that cover?
It covers the area that's within 1,000 feet of the project site.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Mr. Dare.
Yeah, thank you. And obviously, we're all very concerned about safety of that. And so I appreciate even people who wrote in. I do want to thank our staff. I know you guys have been working on this for a long time and then even bringing us up to speed as we go. And I really do appreciate the time that we've had to even sit down with the applicants. So for me, I do see the safety factors. I would say that the improvements and the timing is crucial to my vote. And so please know that that's very important. I do want you to answer, though, what if, and I'm not saying they're going to do this, but for sake of those people who wrote in, our fire, we go and we inspect it once a year, I believe, if I'm accurate, and we see something that we say is not good. Are we just stuck saying, well, this is what they get to do, or do we have the opportunity to pull this? How does that work for somebody who might be concerned?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to your question, Councilmember Dare. If there is an observed violation of one of the conditions of approval associated with this project, then ultimately a revocation process could be initiated, and that would come back to this body for consideration. If there is an item that is not addressed by the conditions of approval and is just simply a fire code issue, then the fire department would go through their process to ultimately work with the applicant and gain compliance. And I would certainly defer to our fire department to answer more detailed questions about that if needed.
I think that answered the questions I need. I just want people to know, sometimes it feels like we vote on something and they're like, well, now we're stuck, well, you know, in the sense, but there is an ongoing safety mechanism in place to keep our citizens safe that we constantly work through with our fire department. And I know the applicants, talking to them, they seemed like they want that as well. So thank you.
Yep, just a quick question. With these conditions that were presented, was it safe to say that the safety of our residents, nearby businesses, fire department, if there was a fire or an incident there, I guess safety would be improved with everything?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, certainly with these site improvements, safety would be improved.
Want to get that on the record for everyone. Thank you.
Kind of, that was part of my question, that I did appreciate the ability for us to add those conditions that increase safety on site for something that's been over there. I'm really old, so I know when I was a little girl, you know, those tanks were there. I'm not going to go into what year, but really just the fact it's a, I was here. So really the ability for us to look at the full site because of the butane blending is allowing us to really mitigate and increase the safety of an aging facility, which like our sewer treatment plant, you know, we've got some old facilities around here. And so that is a plus that I really appreciate. And I guess, remind me right now, obviously in the winter, we have to have the butane, the winter fuel that's blended with the butane. How is that coming in? How is that delivered right now? Does it come by train? Does it come by truck for our gas stations to have that during the winter?
Actually, Mr. Mayor, if you'd allow, I would actually defer that question to the applicant, and they would be able to provide some additional context as to how we get winter fuel right now and how it would be improved.
Yeah, I think it's kind of important for residents to understand that, because obviously, how long have we all been operating with that EPA requirement of winter gasoline that we need to purchase? So where does it come from and how does it get here right now?
Hi. Give us your name for the record. My name's Scott Ritchie. I'm a senior engineering manager for Energy Transfer. I represent the applicant for the butane blending project. Currently, the fuel comes into the terminal by pipeline. This process allows us to blend butane in and get to the regulated levels of the butane in the gasoline.
Okay, and does that fluctuate during temperatures and during the season, in the winter season? Is that something that is constantly changing, or is it just a formula that's what we'll be blending now, or does it give you the ability to make changes if EPA is requiring that?
There are changes during the course of the blend season regulated by the EPA.
Okay, so we can act on that more quickly because it's happening right there. The blending is happening on site.
That's correct.
Okay, perfect. That's all I needed. Thank you.
Just to clarify first. Fuel comes in by pipeline, but the butane comes in by truck.
That's correct.
Okay.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Mr. Anderson, do you have anything that you want to clarify?
Yeah,
also?
actually, I just wanted to make that clarification.
That was my point.
Yeah, so right now, there is not any blending of butane taking place at the facility. They are wanting to begin that process once the construction is done.
Okay.
Right. Yeah. My point was the truck and the fact that you've got, you know, that presents hazards on our roads, you know, that, anyway, thank you. That was clarification I needed.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. This is not a public hearing, so, or is it?
It is.
Doesn't say public hearing on there, Wes.
It's under 11.
This is a public hearing. Anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. I am looking for a motion. Mr. Abbott.
I move to approve the conditional use permit CU 22-0002 associated with PCN 22-0009 based on findings C1 through C5, the findings set forth NRS 278.1744B, and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report with changes to the conditions of approval as presented.
Mr. Anderson.
I will second that as well.
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, guys. 11.2, Madam Clerk. Second reading.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is second reading, public hearing, discussion, and possible adoption of Bill Number 2811 to rezone a 4.18 acre site located at 2770 Spanish Springs Road, APN 516-28103, and 1470 Disc Drive, APN 514-08101, Sparks, Nevada, from PF Public Facilities and A5 Agricultural to C2 General Commercial.
Ian.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. I'm Ian Crittenden, your Development Services Manager. With the permission of the mayor, I'd like to present the next two items together as they're being processed concurrently. So this request has two pieces. The first piece is a request to rezone some property, and the second request is to get an approval or the request for a conditional use permit to construct and operate a mini warehouse facility. Because these items are being processed concurrently, that means that the longest time frame for any of the associated items becomes the time frame for both of the items. What that means for today is that the Planning Commission made motions on both the rezoning and the conditional use permit, and the City Council will be making final action on both of those items. So with those kind of mechanics part of the presentation out of the way, we'll kind of get into the nuts and bolts here. So this site is 4.1 acres in size. It is made up of two parcels. The northern parcel is privately owned. The southern parcel was recently sold to the same private owner. From the city, it was kind of a portion of the fire station 4 site here. And just to give a little more context of where this is at, you can see Vista Boulevard here and Disc Drive here. The old Spanish Springs Road address you might have heard is because this site has been operating from that location since long before many of these streets were in here. And so that was the old address that it's maintained. Other items other than the fire station is, you may know, that the Pinocchio's location and the associated kind of commercial development here. There's the Spanish Springs self-storage site here. Just north of the top of the site, you can see the Rock Church, and there's actually the associated daycare center there and adjacent to it. And then all kind of along the east side and the south side is developed as single family. So here we have the existing and proposed zoning maps. You'll see in the site. Sorry, that microphone kept getting in the way of me using the mouse, so I swapped them out. So here on the left, you can see the existing zoning. The larger parcel on the north has an agricultural A5 zoning, and the site to the south has a PF zoning, like I mentioned, because it was a portion of city-owned property and kind of part of the fire station site. As is being proposed, they are asking to rezone both of those sites to the zoning district of C2. Both of these sites have a current comprehensive plan land use designation of C or commercial. So the request that they have put forward to rezone them to C2 would bring these sites into conformance with the comprehensive plan. So it is the opinion of staff and was supported by Planning Commission that The zoning of C2 is consistent and compatible with the adjacent zonings. You can see the single family of SF6, SF7, and again, SF6 kind of around this site. So we'll jump into the findings associated with rezonings. There are only three. The first is looking at the consistency with the comprehensive plan. As I mentioned a moment ago, the existing comprehensive plan land use designation for this site is C or commercial. The request to rezone these sites to C2 would bring them into conformance with the comprehensive plan. The second finding is about looking at surrounding land uses. The proximity of commercial land uses to residential land uses provides for a mix of uses. In addition, there are existing C2 land uses all adjacent to many of these same residential areas. And those C2 land uses, or the C2 zone properties have been adjacent to those SF6 and residentially zoned properties for quite some time without any major conflicts happening. And so staff does feel that they are compatible uses. At the Planning Commission, there was one question or item that came up about the existing mini warehouse use and an alarm that was going off kind of at all hours. But the way the staff looked at that is an operational issue and not something that's inherent with this zoning district or this type of use. The last finding for rezoning is finding 3, which is about noticing and public hearings. On May 1st, notices were mailed to all property owners that were within 750 feet of this site. There were 205 notices mailed out on that same day, May 5th, or May 1st, I should say. This was also published in the Reno Gazette Journal, the notice was. The Planning Commission did, at their meeting, vote to recommend approval of this request. So now jump into the items associated with the conditional use permit. So the proposed mini warehouse facility would consist of 480 units and a caretaker's house and office. The developed access would be the main access would be off of Disk Drive with a gated emergency access off of Grace Court. The applicant provided a trip generation letter, which indicated that 11 peak hour trips would be generated by this use. That's far below the 80 peak hour trips that would be necessary to trigger a full traffic study. The preliminary landscape plan showed 18% of the site being landscaped. That does comply with the minimum 15% landscaping required in the C2 zoning district. It also includes the use of evergreens along the area where they abut residential development that would additionally provide year-round screening of this use from the residential properties. Staff has also proposed condition number 4 that would require the applicant to submit a photometric plan prior to or with the submittal of any building permits to be able to verify that no light would spill from this site onto adjacent sites. The proposal is designed in conformance with the city's parking requirements. Specific parking places are provided around the office location, and then there's adjacent to each of the units, there's enough room for a car to park to be able to provide access to those, which is a standard of the industry. We'll look really quickly at a couple of elevations of the caretaker's unit, as well as the units themselves. Staff has reviewed the elevations that have been proposed and believes that they are in compliance as proposed and conditioned with the requirements in the zoning district. Staff does also believe that this CUP request is in conformance with the comprehensive plan and the code, and that all CUP findings can be made, which we will jump into now. So as you learned from Sienna's excellent presentation, the first item here is we look at compliance with the comprehensive plan. As stated, the rezoning in this project actually brings this into conformance to the comprehensive plan, but also a conditional use permit for mini warehouse is a permitted use or an allowed use within this zoning district and comprehensive plan designation. As well, goals MG1 and MG2, which support economic vitality and the land use mix that include residential as well as commercial uses throughout the city, are supported by this request. Condition number 2 looks at compatibility with the existing uses. Staff believes, and the Planning Commission agreed, that these uses are compatible with mini warehouse, as mini warehouse is a fairly low intensity use that provides for convenient accessory use to the adjacent residential uses. Finding 3 looks at impairment of natural resources. Neither staff nor the Planning Commission saw any impairment to natural resources with this proposal. And then finding 4 looks for identified impacts. We had a number of them that we looked at closely as we looked at this. The first one was landscaping. The conditions of approval require additional trees and buffering adjacent to the residential uses to make sure that we looked at lighting and sound buffers that would help to mitigate that impact. The next was architecture. Staff looked at that architecture to make sure that it was in conformance with the rules and requirements of the code. We looked at lighting. As I mentioned before, we have a condition of approval, condition 4, that does require a photometric plan be submitted with any building permits to verify that we're not going to have light spilling from this site onto the adjacent residential or the adjacent sites in general. We looked at parking. As I mentioned, parking is adequate and provided in conformance with the code for the adjacent office and the units themselves. And then the last, and this actually came out of the Planning Commission, was hours of operation. They were concerned about hours of operation. They added or proposed a new condition, condition 8, that did look to them to reduce or limit their hours of operation. Those hours were from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. That is the same as what is in place in the conditions of approval for the Spanish Springs mini storage just to the north of them, so we felt that was an appropriate limitation for this site. Again, the last here is the same, noticing and the last finding is noticing and public hearings. Also on May 1st, we mailed and published in the Reno Gazette-Journal noticing for this at the same distance, that 750 feet we did for the rezoning. Normally you'd only do 500, but because they were processing concurrently, we sent those notices to all the adjacent property owners. At the Planning Commission meeting, they also recommended approval of this conditional use permit. That's the end of my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions that the council may have, and I know the applicant is here as well.
Ms. Bybee.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So Ian, you showed like the designs of the warehouse or of the mini storage. Is it all enclosed, or do they have any open? A lot of mini storage places also have for boats and vehicles over just, covered open spots that you can store things, or are all of these enclosed with a door, roll down door?
They are all enclosed.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Dare.
Is there any requirement for any kind of video or any of that?
No, there's no condition at this time for any sort of video surveillance or anything like that.
Okay. I do appreciate all the different things that you shared, and I think you went through a great process. And that'd be the only thing I think might be helpful with some of the things we deal with. But I can say that I do appreciate them working with the time. I agree with that as well. So that was a very good give.
Mr. Anderson.
I just want to make sure, other than the caretaker facility, everything is single story, nothing is 2-story or more, correct?
Correct.
It's all single.
Yes.
And then likewise, I just want to appreciate all the work that's gone into this to make sure that you're accommodating the houses that are surrounding it. I know there's been some concern about this being built, but it is literally adjacent to an existing facility that's being used for the same purpose. Likewise, I appreciate you matching the hours of service so that it's not a 24-hour operation going right next to their homes. And then I just want to clarify and make sure I understand correctly, with the trees and everything that you've done on the buffering, it would limit the amount of visibility of the facility from those homes as well?
Correct.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, this is a public hearing. Anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the dais, and I'm looking for a motion on 11.2.
No.
Mr. Dare.
I move based on findings Z1 through Z3 as set forth in the staff report to adopt Bill number 2811 to rezone a 4.18 acre site located at 2770 Spanish Springs Road, APN -281-03 and 1470 Disk Drive, APN 514-081-01, Sparks, Nevada, from Public Facilities and Agriculture to C2 General Commercial.
Ms. Vanderwell.
Second.
I've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Do you want to read 11.3, Madam Clerk?
Certainly, Mr. Mayor. This is consideration, discussion, and possible action on a request for a conditional use permit to construct and operate a 480-unit mini warehouse storage facility on a 4.18-acre site located at 2770 Spanish Springs Road, APN 516-28103, and 1470 Disk Drive, APN 514-08101, Sparks, Nevada, in the C2 General Commercial Zoning District. PCN 21-0037/CU23-0003.
Any questions from the council? Anything to add, Ian? Public hearing, anyone in the public wishing to speak at this time? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the dais. I'm looking for a motion. Mr. Dare.
I move to approve conditional use permit CU 23-0003 based on findings C1 through C5 and the facts supporting these findings as set forth in the staff report, subject to the 8 conditions of approval as listed in the staff report.
Ms. Spivey.
I'll second that motion.
We've got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Ian. Moving on to 12.1, comments from the public. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comment?
We did not receive any.
Anyone in the public wishing to speak? Okay, we'll bring it back to the dais. We'll go to 12.2, announcements from the mayor, city council, city manager. Nothing? All right.
I would remind everybody that we are canceling our July 10th meeting. We will meet again on July 24th.
Mr. Dare?
I just want to give kudos. I didn't get to make it, but I hear that the kickball thing was pretty awesome, Mr. Abbott. And so supporting things in our community is crucial, and I just wanted to point that out. And we're all part of so many different things, so when they pop up, it's pretty cool. So, good job.
Thank you, thank you. We raised $15,000 for kids in our community.
That's cool.
We had fun
Good job.
doing it.
Ms. Spivey?
I would just like to thank everyone who came out on Saturday for the celebration of life for our beloved mayor, Gino. I think there were 500 or 600 people would be my estimate at the church. And I do want to thank especially Councilman Abbott for the amazing video and hundreds of pictures, and everyone who contributed to that. Were really some special memories for all of us that were there, but thank you for all the work that you did, and a special time for all of us. And I'm sure he's looking down on us today because he knows it's Monday, right?
You got a good chuckle out of that whole presentation. It was pretty cool because it started out with a rock band, went to bagpipes, went to hymnals, and a great sermon by the pastor. So good time was had by all for all the wrong reasons. But I also want to remind you that Thursday is music at the marina at 5 o'clock. We'll have Whitewater, what's that? Whitewater Revival? Yeah. There we go. So that'll be fun. There'll be food trucks and good music. So please join us. Mr. Abbott.
To add on to what Councilwoman Bybee said, if you weren't able to attend, we will be, editing a video up of everything that was there that day. That's another one of my projects, so bear with me. But we will get it done, so if you weren't able to make it, you can view it at another date.
You're a giver. Anyone else? All right, we're down to my favorite subject. We're adjourned.
Don't go anywhere, you guys.
Don't go anywhere. We got another meeting.
Redevelopment. Let's see. Where's Bill today?
I don't know. May not be-
I'm going to Call to order the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting of Monday, June 26, 2023, with a roll call.
Chairperson Bybee?
Here.
Agency members Lawson? Here. Abbott?
Here.
Vanderwell?
Here.
Anderson?
Here.
Dare?
Here.
Chief Legal Officer Duncan? Chief Administrative Officer Kreutz?
Here.
We have a quorum, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 3.1, public comment. Do we have any public comment? Seeing none, I will close item 3.1. Agenda 4.1, approval of the agenda. I have a motion to approve. Agency Member Lawson.
I move to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, Agency Member Anderson.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, please vote.
I get the vote.
You get to vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Moving on, item 5.1. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of the minutes of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting for May 22nd, 2023. Do I have corrections, additions, or a motion to approve? Agency Member Vanderwell.
I move to approve the minutes of the Sparks Redevelopment Agency meeting for May 22nd, 2023.
Okay, Agency Member Abbott.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on, 6.1, consideration, possible acceptance of the report of the claims and bills approved for payment and appropriation transfers for the period of May 10th, 2023 through June 12th, 2023. Looking for a motion to approve. Agency Member Dare.
I move to accept the report of claims and bills and the appropriation transfers for the period of May 10th, 2023 through June 12th, 2023.
Thank you. Agency Member Anderson.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to item 7.1. Consideration, discussion, and possible approval of resolution number SRA 138 to augment the fiscal year 23 budget of the Redevelopment Area 1 Capital Projects Fund by $2,267,000 to provide appropriations for 3 capital projects.
Chair Member Bybee.
Thank you.
Members of the redevelopment area. Today, we seek your approval to augment the Redevelopment Agency 1 Capital Projects Fund in the amount of $2,267,000. As you all are aware, Redevelopment Area 1 terminates on 6/30/2023. So, sorry. All right. As you're all aware, Redevelopment Area 1 terminates on 6/30/2023. So this is a cleanup item for the last year as we brought all the projects together. To cover this adjustment is, the cost to cover this adjustment is the sale of the property on 795 Prater Way and available fund balance. The 3 projects that are being augmented for this augmentation are the Nugget Event Center, $913,000, the Victorian Square Infrastructure Improvements Project 2C, $454,000, and roadway and related improvements with Sierra Nevada Construction of $900,000. And with that, I can answer any questions as I echo, I feel like.
Have any questions? My God. Do I have any questions from the agency? If not, this isn't public hearing, correct? Okay. Looking for a motion to approve as submitted, or presented, sorry. Agency Member Abbott.
I move to approve resolution number SRA-138 to augment the FY23 budget of the Redevelopment Area 1 Capital Projects Fund by $2,267,000 to provide appropriations for 3 capital projects.
Okay, Agency Member Anderson.
Second?
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? If not, please vote. Motion carries unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Weber. Okay, item 8.1, comments from the public. Any comments from the public? I'm not seeing any public, so I will close. I'm seeing public. I'm seeing one public. Did you want to say anything, Andrea? Okay. Okay, you're right. Okay, moving on to announcements from the agency and Chief Administrative Officer. Do you have anything, Mr. Kreutz? I do not, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I will close that item, and we are at adjournment. Thank you.